The truth is, at their first Hyrox, most people, like myself, completely mess up the sled push. And it's not their fault, it's because you sort of get lost into thinking it's more about strength and leg power and getting through it as quickly as possible. But in reality, it's actually a lot more physics and efficiency to it. So in today's video, I'm going to talk to you about how you can be as efficient as possible on the sled and the mistakes to look out for and avoid to make sure it goes as smoothly for you as possible. And today we're going to start right from the top. So I'm going to do this in order of how you would approach the sled and almost give you a little checklist of what to watch out for. Starting with your hand positioning. Now, this links in very nicely to the angle of your body as well. So we're looking for two things to make sure we've got a nice solid position. Now, first of all is where you put your hands on the posts. Now, this will affect your body angle, which can really make or break your sled push, because when we're pushing the sled, we want to make sure the force is going in the same direction as the sled, so horizontally straight forward. The mistake a lot of people make will be they put their hands too high, and that means if you're looking at the body angle, the force is actually going ever so slightly upwards. Now, if I try and push that way, it's going to be a lot harder to move the sled. So, first of all, on most sleds, you probably want your hands about halfway down, maybe slightly higher, maybe slightly lower, depending on your limb length. And this is going to make sure you can get a nice body angle to push horizontally forward and direct the force where it needs to go. So that's the height of your hands. But in terms of what position should you hold the sled? Well, there's three options that you might have seen. Number one, you have the arms straight out. Number two, you've got your hands in and you're a bit closer to the sled. And number three, you use the crook of the elbows. Now, all three might be more beneficial depending on the person, but there's one I think that most people probably shouldn't use, and that one is arms straight. Now, the simple reason for this, I'm going to show you in this photo. If you look at the distance between my main driving force, which is going to be my legs, my arms aren't going to do too much really, how much distance I've got to transfer the force through before it gets to the sled and to move it is quite far. Now, unless you are exceptionally strong overhead and you can really generate a lot of force in that straight arm position through the legs and get it to transfer through, because this requires a really good core and also requires a fair bit of practice, to be honest with you, then I would say this is maybe not the best option for you, which leaves us with the other two positions. Hands in. As you can see, the distance is a lot shorter, which is great. So from that point of view, we're covered. But the one thing I will say of this one, you might be able to move the sled the fastest, but it does take up the most energy from my experience. This leads with one more, which is crook of the elbows. And this is what I recommend if you can. It's the one I prefer. What you want to do in terms of height of the sled, what we just said, get nice and low. You want to make sure your forearms are as in line with the post as you can, because then it's going to put not too much pressure on the elbow. But I think this allows me to control my heart rate and breathing the most, because I don't have as much of that initial spike of the heart rate when I start pushing the sled, meaning I can be more consistent. Therefore, if I'm more consistent, usually going to be faster. So you should try all three of these out and find what works for you. But from a hand point of view, this is where it needs to be. So you've got your hand position sorted. You've got a nice torso angle. You're just going to start pushing. Now, what should I do with my feet when I start pushing? Now, you might be thinking, well, you just put one foot in front of the other. It's simple, right? Because how else would you do it? Now, obviously, once it's moving, you are going to do that, because if you try and do both feet together, that's going to look very interesting, shall we say. But when you initially get the sled moving from a standing start, I think you might be better off having your feet in line with each other. And here's why. If I tell you, generate as much force and power as possible with your legs, whether that be a lift or a jump, you're going to jump with your legs or feet in line with each other. You're not going to go in a split stance with one foot in front of the other. So why would you do that for the sled? Now, this might feel weird initially and you might not get on with it, but you're going to generate more power when your feet are in line. It's like I said, are you going to lift more weight on a back squat or a lunge? Or are you going to jump higher from jumping with your feet together or in a split stance? We all know the answer to that. So it's the same with your sled. So you get the position, you get your feet in line, and then you just do a nice big drive just to get it moving before you go into your main strides. Now, as I say, for some of you, you might not like this, but for me, I feel much more powerful doing this. And unfortunately, almost, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I've done quite a lot of sled work in my time, even when I haven't been training for Hyrox. Okay, so I've spent nearly the whole video talking about the sled before it's even got moving. And to be honest, as with a lot of things, if you set it up right, it's going to go a lot better for you. But what happens when you're actually pushing the sled? Now, there's a common mistake here that people make. Number one is that they just hold their breath. Breathing's good. Breathing's almost always good. When you're pushing the sled, please keep breathing. It's going to help you a lot, okay? And the second one is taking 2 bigger strides. Now, as you can see here, I'm exaggerating this a little bit, but you're using a lot more energy, and it's a lot harder to generate consistent, smooth momentum when you're taking really big reaching steps forward. Instead, if you take short, choppy steps, you might find yourself being able to be a lot more smooth, and therefore you can keep much more of a lid on your heart rate and how much effort you're having to produce to move the sled. So when you're actually pushing the sled, keep breathing, short, choppy steps, rest where needed. We're about to come on to that bit. We've now got pretty much everything else covered for your sled push in terms of how you actually do it, but there's one thing left. On the day, you've got to do 50 meters of it at a weight that's heavier than this, but there's no weight plates up here, and to be completely honest with you, I don't think it really matters how much weight's on the sled for the purposes of this demo. Now, obviously, you could just go and try and push it as fast as you can, rest minimally, and go from there. It's what I did on my first one, and during that race, my legs went to jelly, and there's one point I thought I was going to black out. Now, I can be a bit dramatic sometimes, but that's not ideal on a race day scenario. Now, what you should do is know your weaknesses. For me, obviously, I'm a slightly smaller athlete. I've came from the endurance side, not the strength side. Even though I like to think I'm quite strong for my size, mass moves mass. I'm not that heavy, the sled's going to be harder for me. So I need to take that into account. Now, if you're like that, what I'd recommend doing, you might get away with doing the full 12.5 meters for your first length, fine, but then you might want to be breaking it up into half lengths. Now, I find the half lengths are underutilized, and people almost think that it's a mark against them if they don't just push a full length before they rest. Push a half length, rest for a few seconds, go again, okay? More applicable to singles. You could do some doubles if you were in pro and it's really, really heavy and you both struggle. But from a singles point of view, I really recommend the half lengths. You'll actually see some of the pro athletes doing this too in the Elite 15. So it's no shame in that at all. Actually, you'll be faster because you don't want to push your legs to the point where you've got so much lactate in there and your heart rate's so high that it's really hard to recover. You want to keep it as manageable as possible. And by doing this, you might just be able to achieve that goal. Now, obviously, this isn't always going to work, and on the race day, it might feel different, which is why you should practice this before you get to your race and practice a couple of different techniques. So have a plan A and maybe a fallback option, as for your upper stations, as for your running, of what you can go back to. So let's say I'm feeling really good about the sled, and I'm just going to try and do one length, rest a few seconds, next length 4 times. Say it doesn't work, break it up. Don't just really push and redline too hard, because that's going to be detrimental to your race. And I'm trying to get you to be as efficient as we can so you can get the best possible time. Even though I know in the grand scheme of things, your Hyrox time probably isn't going to mean too much, but it's always nice to get a PB. So there's my tips when it comes to this lead push in order to make you as efficient as possible. Now, obviously, the one thing it's really hard to account for is the dreaded, or famous at this point, carpet at Hyrox. Because it's temporary, because it's stuck down, you do get rolls. Some lanes feel harder than others. And guess what? At the time, it might feel unfair, but that is sport. Whether you call Hyrox a sport is a completely different debate. But that's just the way it is. As I say, unless it's your livelihood, try not to get too caught up in that sort of thing. If you want to try and replicate the carpets, I always suggest loading it a little bit heavier in training. And also, if you really want to put something in front of the sled, like a plate to increase friction, then you can. But as I say, not going to be possible for a lot of you. And maybe just training heavier and getting used to the fact that it might be really bad. And then you might be positively surprised on race day. But I hope you enjoyed the sled tips. If you want more tips about Hyrox, as always, I'm going to leave a QR code here for 30 ways in 30 days that you can get better for your next Hyrox. I'll also leave a link in the description as well. Unsubscribe whenever you want, no pressure as always. But other than that, I hope you have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next video.